When my daughter threw scalding coffee in my face, I didn't scream. I couldn't. The shock silenced me before the pain could find my voice. I just stood there in my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made her breakfast every morning for 18 years, feeling the liquid sear across my cheek, my neck, soaking into my color. And in that moment, watching her chest heave with rage, her manicured nails still gripping that empty mug, I realized I didn't know her anymore. Or maybe I never had. They say you never really know someone until money comes between you. I used to think that was cynical. Now I know it's just true. My name is Margaret, though most people call me Maggie. I'm 63 years old, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I'd finally earned my peace. After Henry died 2 years back, my husband of 37 years, gone to a heart attack while trimming the roses he'd planted for our anniversary, I'd learned to build a life alone. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine. Quiet mornings with coffee on the porch, volunteer work at the library on Tuesdays, Sunday dinners that I'd cook just for myself, setting one place at a table built for 6. I'd sold the big house after Henry passed. Too many memories, too many empty rooms. The new place was smaller, a cottage-style rental near the edge of town, with a garden just big enough for tomatoes and herbs. It had good light in the mornings. I liked that. I'd wake up early, before the world got noisy, and sit in that light with my hands wrapped around a warm mug, thinking about nothing in particular. Henry had left me comfortable. Not wealthy, but comfortable. There was life insurance, his pension, our savings. I'd been careful with it, invested some, kept some liquid, donated a little to the causes he cared about. I didn't need much. My needs had gotten smaller as I'd gotten older, and I'd made peace with that. My daughter, Claire, had always been different from me. Where I was careful, she was impulsive. Where I saved, she spent. Even as a child, she'd wanted things, brand name shoes, the latest toys, trips her friends were taking. Henry and I had done our best, given her what we could, but we'd also tried to teach her the value of $1. I'm not sure the lesson stuck. She'd married young, 23, to a man named Derek. I remember the wedding. Claire in ivory silk, Derek in a suit that probably cost more than my first car, his smile wide and white and somehow empty. Henry had whispered to me during the reception, "He's got his father's eyes, cold." I'd brushed it off then, told myself Henry was just being protective, that no man would ever be good enough for his little girl. I should have listened. The first few years, things seemed fine. Claire would call every few weeks, visit on holidays. Derek had a job in finance, something with investments, trading, terms I didn't fully understand. They lived in a condo downtown, all glass and steel and marble countertops. It was beautiful in a sterile way, like a hotel lobby. No warmth, no softness. But Claire seemed happy, or at least I told myself she did. After Henry died, the calls became less frequent. I understood she had her own life, her own marriage, her own struggles. Grief is strange. It makes some people draw closer and others pull away. I didn't push. I sent birthday cards, left voicemails, tried to give her space to process losing her father in her own time. Then 2 months ago, she called out of the blue. Her voice had a brightness to it that felt forced, like someone trying too hard to sound casual. "Mom, Derek and I want to come visit this weekend. We have a surprise for you." A surprise? The word should have felt warm, exciting. Instead, something in my stomach tightened. Maybe it was her tone. Too light? Too cheerful? Or maybe it was just that at my age, surprises rarely turn out well. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, pushing down the unease. "I'd love to see you both." That Saturday morning, I cleaned the cottage top to bottom. I baked Henry's recipe for banana bread, the one Claire used to love as a girl. I bought fresh flowers for the table, daisies, her favorite. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted her to see that I was okay, that I'd built something good out of my grief, that she didn't need to worry about me. They arrived just after noon. Derek's car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than my annual budget, pulled into the driveway with a crunch of gravel. I watched from the window as they got out. Claire looked thinner than I remembered, her collarbones sharp beneath her designer blouse. Derek wore sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast, his jaw set in that way men do when they're bracing for something unpleasant. I opened the door with a smile. "There's my girl." Claire hugged me, but it was brief, perfunctory. Her perfume was expensive, something floral and cloying that didn't quite mask the tension rolling off her shoulders. "Hi, Mom. You look good." Her eyes scanned the cottage, taking in the modest furniture, the secondhand rug, the simple curtains. I saw something flicker across her face. Disappointment? Judgment? It was gone too quickly to name. Derek shook my hand without removing his sunglasses. "Margaret, good to see you." "Please, come in. I made banana bread, and I thought we could have lunch." "Actually, Mom, we can't stay long." Claire's voice had that bright, brittle quality again. "We need to talk to you about something important." The unease from the phone call returned, stronger now. I led them to the living room, gestured for them to sit. Derek chose the armchair, Claire perched on the edge of the sofa. Neither of them relaxed, neither of them smiled. I sat across from them, hands folded in my lap, waiting. Claire glanced at Derek. He nodded, a sharp, permissive movement. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope, thick, official-looking. She held it for a moment, her fingers trembling slightly, before placing it on the coffee table between us. "Mom," she said, and her voice wavered now, the brightness cracking. "We need your help." I looked at the envelope, then back at my daughter. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and I wondered if she'd been crying before they arrived or if she was about to start now. Derek sat perfectly still, his face unreadable behind those sunglasses. "What kind of help?" I asked, though something in me already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. Claire pushed the envelope closer to me. "Just open it, please." My hands felt heavy as I reached for it. The paper was expensive, the kind used for legal documents. Inside were several pages, dense with text and numbers. I pulled them out slowly, adjusting my reading glasses. The first page was a loan document. My eyes caught on certain phrases: personal guarantee, co-signer, and then my name, Margaret Ellen Hartford. My signature at the bottom, swooping and familiar. Except I'd never seen this document before in my life. I flipped to the next page. Another loan agreement, then another. Credit card statements, bank documents, all with my name attached, all with signatures that looked like mine, but weren't. The numbers blurred together, but one figure stood out, repeated across multiple pages. $400,000. $400,000. My mouth dried. I looked up at Claire, then at Derek. "What is this?" Derek leaned forward, finally removing his sunglasses. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "Those are debts that were taken out in your name, Margaret. We've been dealing with creditors for months now, trying to sort this mess out." "Debts in my name?" My voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. I didn't sign these." "The signatures suggest otherwise." Derek's tone was matter-of-fact, almost bored. "Look, we understand this is probably some kind of identity theft situation. It happens to older people all the time, but the fact remains these are legally binding documents with your name on them." Older people. The words stung more than they should have. Claire reached across and touched my knee. Her hand was cold. "Mom, we know you didn't mean for this to happen, but Derek's been working with lawyers, and they say the only way to resolve this is to pay it off. Otherwise, they could come after your assets, your savings, even this house." "This is a rental. I don't own it." "Whatever savings you have then." Derek stood, began pacing. It felt rehearsed, like a performance. "Look, Margaret, we're trying to help you here. Claire and I have been scrambling to figure out how to protect you from this. We've already paid down some of it ourselves, but we can't cover everything. I stared at the documents again, my mind racing. The signatures did look like mine, close enough that someone who didn't know me well might not question them. But I knew my own hand, the way I looped my G's, the pressure I used. These were good forgeries, but they were forgeries. Who would do this? Who would forge my name? Claire's eyes welled up. We don't know, Mom. That's why we need you to help us fix it before it gets worse. Something in her voice wasn't right. It was the same tone she'd used as a teenager when she'd wrecked Henry's car and tried to blame it on black ice, even though it was July. That pleading, desperate sound that masked something else underneath. I looked at Derek again. He'd stopped pacing and was watching me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. This was a man used to getting what he wanted. This was a man who saw people as transactions. I need to think, I said slowly. This is a lot to process. There's no time to think, Derek's voice sharpened. The creditors are threatening legal action. We need to settle this now before it goes to court, before your name gets dragged through. Derek, Claire's voice was quiet but firm. He stopped, jaw clenching. I gathered the papers back into the envelope, my hand steadier now. I need to speak with my own lawyer, Henry's, a state attorney. He'll know what to do. A lawyer will just cost you more money, Derek said. Money you could be using to pay off these debts. Nevertheless, I stood, clutching the envelope to my chest. This is too big a decision to make without proper counsel. Claire stood too, quickly, panic flashing across her face. Mom, please, we're trying to help you. If you drag this out, if you involve more people, it's just going to get more complicated, more expensive. We can handle this quietly as a family. Family. The word should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like a trap. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, I said, moving toward the door. My voice was calm, measured, even though my heart was hammering. Derek's face darkened. You don't have time. Then I'll make time. I opened the door, a clear dismissal. Thank you for coming. For a moment, no one moved. The air in the room felt thick, charged with something ugly. Then Derek grabbed his sunglasses from the coffee table with more force than necessary. Let's go, Claire. But Claire didn't move. She stared at me, and in her eyes I saw something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't worry. It wasn't fear from my well-being. It was anger. Mom, her voice was low now, all the artificial brightness gone. You need to pay this debt. I didn't create this debt. It doesn't matter. The words burst out of her, loud enough for me to flinch. It's in your name. You're responsible. And if you don't take care of it, they'll come after everything Dad left you, everything we're supposed to. She cut herself off, but the damage was done. Everything we're supposed to inherit. The truth settled over me like cold water. This wasn't about helping me. This wasn't about protecting me from identity theft or creditors or legal action. This was about money. My money. Henry's life insurance, his pension, the savings we built over decades of careful living. Money that would eventually go to Claire, unless I spent it all paying off a debt that didn't exist. Get out. My voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. Both of you, get out of my house. Derek grabbed Claire's arm. Come on, we tried to do this the easy way. The easy way? I repeated. The easy way to what exactly? He didn't answer, just pulled Claire toward the door. She went, but she turned back at the last moment. You're going to regret this, Mom. You're going to wish you'd listened to us. Then they were gone, Derek's expensive car spitting gravel as it tore out of my driveway. I stood in the doorway, still holding the envelope, my whole body trembling. The banana bread sat cooling on the kitchen counter, untouched. The daisies I'd bought drooped slightly in their vase. I walked slowly to the kitchen, set the envelope on the table, and stared at it. $400,000 in my name, with signatures that looked like mine but weren't. My daughter had just tried to scam me. My own daughter. I thought about calling someone. My sister, maybe, or my neighbor Jean. But what would I say? That Claire had shown up with forged documents and demanded hundreds of thousands of dollars? It sounded insane. It sounded like something that happened to other people, not to me. I made myself a cup of tea, my hands shaking so badly I spilled water on the counter. I sat down at the table and opened the envelope again, forcing myself to look at each document carefully. Loan agreements dated months apart, credit cards in my name from banks I'd never dealt with, all bearing my forged signature. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment plan. This had taken time, preparation, access to my personal information, my social security number, my address, my date of birth. Someone had been planning this for a while, and that someone was my daughter, or her husband, or both. The tea grew cold in my cup as I sat there, the afternoon light shifting across the kitchen floor. I thought about Claire as a little girl, how she'd curl up in my lap and beg for just one more story. I thought about teaching her to ride a bike, Henry running beside her with his hand on the seat, both of them laughing. I thought about her high school graduation, how proud she looked in her cap and gown. When had it changed? When had she looked at me and seen not her mother, but a bank account, an inheritance waiting to be claimed? Or had she always been this way and I'd just been too blind to see it? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face twisted in anger, heard Derek's cold voice dismissing my concerns. I kept thinking about those documents, wondering how long they'd been planning this. How desperate or how greedy did you have to be to forge your own mother's signature? By dawn, I'd made a decision. I called Robert Chen, the attorney who'd handled Henry's estate. His secretary said he could see me that afternoon. I spent the morning making copies of everything in that envelope. I documented it all, photographed each page, scanned them to my computer, saved them in 3 different places. Henry had always said to keep good records. I wished he was here now. He'd know what to do. He'd always known what to do. Robert's office was in a brick building downtown, 3rd floor with windows that overlooked the park where Henry and I used to walk on Sundays. Robert was in his 50s, silver-haired and calm, the kind of lawyer who never raised his voice because he never needed to. He spread the documents across his desk, reading each one carefully. I watched his face, looking for a reaction. His expression barely changed, but I saw his jaw tighten when he examined the signatures. "Mrs. Hartford," he said finally, looking up at me over his reading glasses, "these are forgeries." The relief that flooded through me was so intense I almost cried. Someone believed me. Someone saw what I saw. "I know," I said. "But my daughter and her husband, they came to me saying, I need to pay this debt. $400,000. Robert set down the papers and folded his hands. "Do you know who created these documents?" I hesitated. Saying it out loud would make it real, would make it something I couldn't take back. I think Claire and Derek did, or had someone do it for them. Robert didn't look surprised. He'd been a lawyer for 30 years. Maybe nothing surprised him anymore. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know." My voice cracked. "She's my daughter. She's also attempting to defraud you of a significant sum of money." Robert's voice was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Hartford, if these documents were filed with creditors, if attempts were made to collect on these debts, this isn't just family drama. This is a crime, identity theft, forgery, fraud." The words felt heavy. criminal words, prison words. What are my options? Robert leaned back in his chair. You can report this to the police, file charges, let law enforcement investigate. Or, he paused, you can wait, see if they escalate. But I'll tell you right now, people who do this once rarely stop. If they think you're vulnerable, if they think they can intimidate you into paying, they'll keep pushing. I told them I wouldn't pay without consulting you. They weren't happy. I imagine not. Robert pulled out a legal pad and began writing. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to contact these supposed creditors and inform them that any debts in your name are fraudulent. We'll file disputes with the credit bureaus, get a fraud alert on your accounts. Second, I want you to consider filing a police report. You don't have to press charges immediately, but you need documentation, a paper trail. I nodded, feeling numb. And Claire, don't engage with her, not until we know more. If she contacts you, don't answer, don't argue, don't explain. Just forward any communication to me. I left Robert's office feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because someone was helping me, taking action. Heavier because I understood what I was about to do. I was going to war with my own daughter. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Claire, no messages. I spent the time contacting my bank, adding security to my accounts, changing passwords. I felt like I was preparing for a siege. On the third day, they came back. I was in the kitchen, making lunch, just a simple salad, nothing elaborate, when I heard the knock, sharp, insistent. Not the knock of someone visiting, the knock of someone demanding entry. I looked through the peephole. Claire and Derek stood on my porch. Claire's face was blotchy, her eyes red. Derek looked furious. I didn't open the door. Mom, she's muffled through the wood. Mom, I know you're in there. We'll need to talk. I have nothing to say. I called back, please leave. Open the door, that was Derek. We drove all the way out here. The least you can do is talk to us. My lawyer has advised me not to speak with you. Silence. Then Claire's voice, smaller now. Your lawyer? Mom, what did you tell him? The truth. The truth? Derek's voice rose. The truth is, you owe money, and you're trying to weasel out of it by making us look like criminals. I'm calling the police if you don't leave. I reached for my phone, but before I could dial, I heard a key scraping in my lock, the sound of it turning. The door swung open. They'd kept a key from when I'd first moved in, when Claire had said she wanted one just in case of emergencies. I'd forgotten about it. They stood in my entryway, and the look on Derek's face made me step backward. You're not calling anyone, he said quietly. Claire pushed past him, and for a moment I thought she might hug me. Instead, she grabbed my shoulders, her fingers digging in. Mom, listen to me. We need that money. Do you understand? We need it. Then get a job, I said, trying to pull away. Get a loan. But you're not getting mine. There are no more loans, Claire's voice broke. Derek lost everything. The company fired him. We're drowning in debt, real debt. We're going to lose the condo, lose everything, and Dad's money is just sitting there in your account doing nothing. So there it was, the real truth. Not identity theft, not some elaborate scheme gone wrong, just desperation and greed wrapped together. Your father's money is my money. He left it to me, to take care of me, not to bail out my grown daughter and her husband. Derek moved closer. You're a retired widow living in a rental cottage. You don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars. What are you saving it for? You'll be dead in 20 years anyway. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Get out, I whispered. Both of you, get out now. Not until you agree to help us. Claire's grip tightened on my shoulders. Mom, please, I'm begging you. We can say the debts are real, you can pay them off, and no one has to know. No lawyers, no police, no drama. Just family helping family. By committing fraud. By being smart. Claire's face was inches from mine now. God, when did you become so selfish? Dad would be ashamed of you. That broke something in me. Don't you dare speak for your father. Henry worked every day of his life to provide for us. He saved every penny. And you want me to hand it over because your husband made bad investments? Because you can't live within your means? Claire's hands dropped from my shoulders. For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her. Then I saw her eyes shift to the kitchen counter, where my coffee maker sat, the pot still half full from this morning. She moved fast. Before I could react, she'd grabbed the pot and was walking back toward me. Claire, Derek said, a warning in his voice. But she wasn't listening. Her face had gone blank, empty. I'd seen that look before, when she was a toddler having a tantrum. The look that came right before she broke something. You're going to help us, she said flatly. No, I said. I'm not. She threw the coffee. The coffee wasn't as hot as it would have been fresh from the pot, but it was hot enough. I felt it splash across my left cheek, my neck, soaking into my blouse. The shock came first, a moment of disbelief where my brain couldn't process what had just happened. Then the pain arrived, sharp and burning, spreading across my skin like fire. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my face. Through the pain, I heard Derek swear, heard the coffee pot shatter on the floor. My eyes were squeezed shut, tears streaming down my cheeks, whether from pain or shock or grief. I couldn't tell. Jesus Christ, Claire! Derek's voice seemed far away. What the hell is wrong with you? I forced my eyes open. Claire stood frozen, the empty pot handle still in her hand, her face pale. She looked at me, at her own hand, then back at me. Something flickered across her expression, horror maybe, or regret, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. She started, but no other words came. We're leaving. Derek grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. Now. Mom, I didn't mean. Move. Derek shoved her through the doorway. I heard their footsteps on the porch, rapid and retreating, the car door slamming, the engine starting, then silence. I stood in my kitchen, coffee dripping onto the floor, my face burning. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn on the tap. I soaked a dish towel in cold water and pressed it to my cheek, hissing at the contact. The cold helped, but not enough. My phone. Where was my phone? I found it on the counter, picked it up with trembling fingers. I should call 911. I should call Robert. I should call someone. Instead, I sank to the floor, my back against the cabinet, the wet towel pressed to my face, and I let myself cry. Not from the pain, though that was real enough, but from the sheer devastating heartbreak of what had just happened. My daughter had assaulted me. My Claire, who I'd nursed through colic and nightmares and teenage heartbreak, had thrown boiling liquid in my face because I wouldn't give her money. How do you come back from that? How do you reconcile the child you raised with the person who could do such a thing? I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the coffee on the floor to stop steaming. Long enough for the pain in my face to shift from sharp burning to a deeper throbbing ache. Finally, I pulled myself up and looked in the bathroom mirror. My left cheek was angry red, already starting to blister in places. My neck had fared a bit better. The collar of my blouse had absorbed some of it, but there were still red patches spreading down toward my collarbone. I took photos, 5 of them, from different angles. My hands were steadier now, moving on some kind of autopilot. Document everything. Evidence. That's what Robert had said. Then I called him. "Mrs. Hartford," he said, "is everything all right?" "My daughter threw coffee on me," I said. The words sounded surreal, like I was describing something that happened to someone else. A pause, then quieter. "Where are you now?" "At home." "Have you called the police?" "Not yet." "I want you to hang up and call them right now, then call me back. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Margaret," he almost never used my first name, "are you hurt? Do you need an ambulance?" I looked at my reflection again. The blisters were small, nothing that would scar probably. "I don't think so. It's a burn, but it's not third degree or anything." "Call the police. Document everything. I'll be waiting to hear from you." I called 911. The dispatcher was efficient, kind. She asked questions I answered automatically. My address, what happened, was I in immediate danger? Did I need medical assistance? A patrol car would be there in 15 minutes. I hung up and stood in my living room, looking at the broken coffee pot on the floor, the dark liquid pooling in the grout lines of my tile. There was something almost peaceful about the moment. The decision had been made for me. Claire had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The officer who arrived was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a notepad. "Officer Martinez," his badge said. He took one look at my face and immediately called for an EMT. "Mrs. Hartford, I need you to tell me exactly what happened." So I did. I told him about the forged documents, about Claire and Derek's first visit, about today, about the key they shouldn't have had, the threats, the coffee. My voice stayed steady through all of it. I surprised myself with that steadiness. The EMT arrived, a woman with short gray hair who cleaned and dressed the burns with gentle efficiency. "You should have someone look at this in a few days," she said. "Watch for signs of infection. But you were lucky. Could have been much worse." Lucky. I supposed I was in a terrible sort of way. Officer Martinez photographed the scene, the broken pot, my injuries. He took the key Claire had used from where it still sat in my lock. "I'll need you to come to the station to file a formal report," he said, "and you'll need to decide if you want to press charges." "I do." The words came without hesitation. "I want to press charges." He nodded, like he'd expected this. "Based on what you've told me, we're looking at assault, potentially breaking and entering since they entered without permission despite having a key. There's also the matter of the forged documents. My attorney has copies of everything." "Good, that helps." He handed me a card with a case number. "Someone from the detective division will contact you within 48 hours. In the meantime, I'd recommend changing your locks, today if possible." After they left, I sat in my quiet house and called Robert back. I told him everything about the key, the confrontation, the coffee, the police. "You did the right thing," he said. "I know that doesn't make it easier, but you did the right thing." "She's going to hate me." "She already made her choice, Margaret. This is you making yours." That night, I called a locksmith. He came within the hour, an older man who didn't ask questions, just changed all my locks and added a deadbolt to the back door. I paid him in cash and thanked him quietly. Then I called my neighbor, Jean. She was 70 years old, retired from nursing, with 3 grown kids of her own and opinions on everything. I'd helped her with her garden over the summer. She'd brought me casseroles after Henry died. "Maggie," she answered on the second ring. "What's wrong? You sound terrible." I told her, not everything, but enough. Jean listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "I'm coming over," she said finally. "Jean, it's late." "I'm coming over. Put the kettle on." She arrived 20 minutes later with a box of chamomile tea and a determination in her eyes that reminded me why we'd become friends. She looked at my face, now bandaged and swollen, and her expression hardened. "Your daughter did this?" I nodded. Jean set down the tea and pulled me into a hug. Not a gentle, pitying hug, but a fierce one. The kind that said, "I've got you. You're not alone." "What can I do?" she asked when she finally let go. "I don't know. I needed someone to know. Someone who won't judge me for what? For protecting yourself? For refusing to be a victim?" Jean shook her head. "No, honey, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing." We drank tea at my kitchen table, and I told her the whole story. The forged documents, Derek's financial troubles, Claire's desperation. Jean listened, and sometimes she swore, and once she slammed her hand on the table so hard our cups jumped. "That son of a bitch," she muttered. "That manipulative son of a bitch. And your daughter." She stopped herself, looked at me apologetically. "I'm sorry, I know she's your child." "She threw coffee in my face, Jean." "I know, and that's why you can't back down now. You back down, they'll know they can push you. They'll come back. They'll push harder." I thought about Derek's cold eyes, Claire's desperation. Jean was right. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. "There's something else," Jean said, leaning forward. "My son-in-law is a retired cop. Detective, actually. Worked fraud cases for 20 years. If you want, I can ask him to look at those documents. Off the record. He might catch something the police miss." "Would he do that?" "For me? Yes. And I'm asking for you." She squeezed my hand. "You're not fighting this alone, Maggie. You hear me? You are not alone." Jean's son-in-law was named Frank Riley, and he looked exactly like what you'd imagine a retired detective to look like. Weathered face, sharp eyes, and the kind of quiet intensity that came from spending decades reading people's lies. He showed up at my house 2 days later, a Tuesday morning, carrying a briefcase and a thermos of coffee that he didn't offer to share. "Mrs. Hartford?" He shook my hand with a firm grip. "Jean tells me you've got quite a situation." My face was healing, the angry red fading to pink, but the bandage was still there. Frank's eyes went to it immediately, then away. Professional courtesy, not looking too long at someone's pain. I spread the copied documents across my dining room table. Frank put on reading glasses and began going through them methodically, making notes in a small notebook. He didn't speak for a long time, just read and studied and occasionally grunted. Finally, he sat back. "These are good. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. The signatures are practiced. They spent time getting them right. But there are tells." "Tells?" He pointed to one of the loan documents. "See how the pressure's uneven here? Your real signature," he pulled out my ID from where I'd set it aside for comparison, "flows naturally. This one has hesitation marks, someone copying slowly, trying to get it perfect. And here the angle's wrong. You're right-handed, yes?" "Yes." "This signature was done by someone left-handed or by a right-handed person using their non-dominant hand to disguise their writing. Small details, but they're there." "Will that be enough to prove fraud?" Frank made a non-committal sound. "It'll help, but what'll really help is the paper trail. These documents claim debts were incurred months ago. Where's the money? If $400,000 was borrowed in your name, there should be bank transfers, payment records, something showing where the funds went." He looked at me over his glasses. "Has anyone contacted you claiming you owe them money? Collection agencies? Banks?" "No, nothing." "Because the debts don't exist. Your daughter and her husband created these documents, probably hoping to pressure you into paying them directly, cutting out the middleman. Smart, in the stupid way." He closed his notebook. "The police will subpoena your financial records, check if any accounts were opened in your name. That'll take time, but I can do some digging on my end, see what I can find about Derek's financial situation. Sometimes knowing the motive helps build the case." "I don't want to know the motive," I said quietly. "I already know it. They need money." "You'd be surprised how often it's more complicated than that." Frank stood, gathering the documents. "Mind if I make copies? I'll return these to you by tomorrow." "Of course." He paused at the door. "Jean also told me your daughter assaulted you, that she's facing charges." "Yes." "How are you holding up?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that directly. Robert had been professional, the police efficient, Jean supportive, but no one had just asked how I was. I don't know, I said honestly. Some moments I'm angry, some moments I'm just sad. And sometimes I can't believe this is really happening, that this is my life now. Frank nodded. That's normal. What happened to you, it's a betrayal. Not just the fraud, but the violence. And when it comes from family, it cuts deeper. He shifted his briefcase to his other hand. Word of advice. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. I've seen too many victims back down because they feel bad for the people who hurt them. Don't be one of them. After he left, I sat at my empty dining room table and thought about guilt. Was I supposed to feel guilty? Part of me did. Part of me kept thinking, maybe if I'd been a better mother, maybe if I'd taught Claire different values, maybe if Henry and I had been stricter or more generous or something, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger each day, knew that wasn't true. I'd done my best. I'd loved my daughter, provided for her, taught her right from wrong. What she chose to do with that was on her, not me. The detective assigned to my case called that afternoon. Detective Sarah Kovacs, she said. Financial Crimes Division. She had a no-nonsense voice that I found oddly comforting. Mrs. Hartford, I've reviewed the initial report. I need you to come in and give a formal statement about both the assault and the alleged fraud. Can you come tomorrow morning? Yes, of course. Bring any documentation you have. The forged papers, any emails or text messages from your daughter or her husband, financial statements, anything that might be relevant. And Mrs. Hartford, I want you to be prepared. This kind of case can take months to build. Family fraud cases are complicated. The defendants often claim it was a misunderstanding, that they had permission, that there's he said, she said confusion. It can get ugly. It's already ugly. Fair point. I heard papers rustling on her end. We're also going to need access to your bank records, credit reports, that sort of thing. Your attorney can be present when we go through everything. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the word defendants. Claire and Derek weren't just my daughter and son-in-law anymore. They were defendants, suspects, criminals. The thought should have made me feel victorious, or at least vindicated. Instead, it just made me feel tired. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. You're making a huge mistake. This is family business. Drop the charges. I stared at it for a long moment, then forwarded it to Robert and Detective Kovacs. Then I blocked the number. Another text came through. Different number. Dad would be so disappointed in you. Block. Forward. Then a third. We're going to lose everything because of you. Our home. Our lives. Is that what you want? I turned off my phone. The next morning at the police station, I sat across from Detective Kovacs in a small, windowless room and told my story again. She recorded everything, asked clarifying questions, took notes. When I showed her the threatening texts, her expression hardened. Witness intimidation, that doesn't help their case. She made a note. Have there been any other attempts to contact you? Not since I blocked those numbers, but I'm afraid they might show up at my house again. If they do, call 911 immediately. Don't engage, don't open the door, just call. She leaned forward slightly. Mrs. Hartford, I've worked a lot of fraud cases. Most of them, the victims feel ashamed, like they should have seen it coming, should have been smarter. But this isn't your fault. Your daughter exploited your trust and your love. There's no defense against that. Hearing it from a detective, someone who'd seen the worst of what people could do to each other, helped somehow. Frank called 3 days later. Found some interesting things about Derek's finances. Want me to come over? He arrived with Jean, who immediately busied herself making coffee while Frank spread papers across my kitchen table. Derek worked for an investment firm, Halstead Financial. He was let go 8 months ago for performance issues, which is corporate speak for either he screwed up badly or he did something unethical. I've got a buddy who still works there. He made some calls. Frank tapped one of the papers. Turns out, Derek was playing fast and loose with client money. Nothing provable or they would have prosecuted, but enough that they fired him and made sure he'd never work in finance again. So he's broke. Worse than broke. He owes money to some very unpleasant people, gambling debts mostly. Your daughter's condo? Mortgaged to the hilt. Their cars? Leased. Credit cards maxed out. They're drowning, and they've been drowning for a while. Jean set down coffee mugs with more force than necessary. So they decided to rob Maggie. Essentially. Frank pulled out another document. Here's the thing that's going to help your case. 3 months ago, Derek applied for a loan using some of the same information that's on those forged documents. He was denied. My guess, that's when they came up with Plan B. Forge your signatures, create fake debt documents, pressure you into paying them directly. Can you prove that? The police can. They'll subpoena his loan applications, his computer, his phone records. If there's evidence linking him to the forgeries, emails with document templates, internet searches about how to forge signatures, anything like that, they'll find it. He sipped his coffee. And there's something else. Your daughter called her insurance company 2 weeks ago asking about the payout on a life insurance policy. The room went very quiet. What policy? I asked, though I could hear how hollow my voice sounded. One she claimed to have on you. Turns out there is no policy, but the fact that she called asking, Frank met my eyes. I'm not saying she was planning anything, but combined with everything else, it shows a pattern. Financial desperation leading to increasingly unethical behavior. Jean sat down heavily. My God, Maggie, you're not safe. I'm being dramatic, Frank said quickly. I'm not suggesting they're planning to hurt you, but I am saying you need to be careful. No contact, new locks, security system if you can afford it, and maybe stay somewhere else for a while, just until this settles down. I'm not leaving my home. I've already lost my daughter. I'm not losing this too. Frank and Jean exchanged a look. Then at least get a security system, Jean said. And don't open the door for anyone you don't know. And check in with me every day. Every single day, Maggie, or I'm calling the police. I agreed, more to ease their worry than because I thought I was in real danger. But that night, alone in my cottage, I found myself checking the locks 3 times before bed. Found myself lying awake at every small sound, the house settling, branches against the window, a car passing on the street. My daughter had thrown coffee in my face. My daughter had forged documents in my name. My daughter had asked about life insurance. How much worse could it get? The security system was installed on a Friday. 2 cameras, one at the front door, one at the back, and sensors on all the windows. The technician, a patient young man named Marcus, showed me how to use the app on my phone, how to review footage, how to set the alarm when I went to bed. You'll get alerts anytime there's movement, he explained. You can adjust the sensitivity if you're getting too many notifications from birds or squirrels. I thanked him and paid the installation fee, trying not to think about how sad it was that a 63-year-old widow needed security cameras to protect herself from her own child. Detective Kovacs called the following Monday. We executed a search warrant on your daughter's residence this morning. We've seized computers, phones, financial documents. It'll take time to go through everything, but I want you to know we're moving forward. How did they react? A pause. About how you'd expect. Hostile. They've lawyered up, which is their right. But Mrs. Hartford, there's something you should know. Your daughter is telling people you're having mental health issues, that you're confused, possibly suffering from dementia, and that she was trying to help you manage your finances. The words hit me like a slap. That's a lie. I know. We're going to need medical records showing you're competent, maybe a psychological evaluation, just to counter that narrative before it gains traction. So it had come to this. I would have to prove I wasn't losing my mind, prove that my memories, my perceptions, my reality was real. I'll do whatever you need. Your attorney can help coordinate that. And Mrs. Hartford, stay off social media. Don't look at what people are saying. It'll only hurt. But of course I looked. That night, late, when I couldn't sleep, I opened Facebook on my laptop. I hadn't posted in months, hadn't seen the point, but I could still see other people's posts. Claire had shared something 2 days ago. A long, emotional message about how hard it was to watch a parent decline, how heartbreaking it was when they turned on you, how she was working with professionals to get me the help I needed. The comments below were full of sympathy, heart emojis, people saying they understood that they'd been through similar situations with their aging parents. My hands shook as I read them. People I'd known for years, neighbors and acquaintances, all convinced I was the one who'd lost touch with reality. Claire had painted herself as the devoted daughter dealing with a difficult, confused mother. I wanted to comment, to defend myself, to tell them the truth, but Robert's voice echoed in my head. Don't engage. Documentation, not emotion. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, feeling the full weight of what I was up against. This wasn't just about money or forged documents anymore. This was about my reputation, my sanity, my very sense of self. Claire was trying to gaslight me publicly, and people were believing her. Jean found me the next morning on my porch, still in my pajamas, staring at nothing. "Maggie," she climbed the steps quickly. "What's wrong? You didn't check in yesterday and you're not answering your phone." I told her about the Facebook post, about Claire's narrative, about feeling like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win. Jean pulled out her phone, read the post, and her face went through several shades of red. That manipulative little... She stopped herself. "I'm commenting right now." "Jean, don't. Robert said..." "I don't work for Robert." Her fingers were already flying across the screen. "People need to know the truth." I watched her type, post, then turn her phone to show me. She'd written, "Claire, if your mother is so confused, why did the police issue a warrant to search your home? Why are you facing criminal charges? Some of us know what's really happening here." Jean, let them think what they want. You've got friends too, Maggie. You're not alone in this. Within an hour, Jean's comment had sparked a thread. Some people defended Claire. Others asked questions. The narrative was shifting, slowly, from poor daughter dealing with difficult mother to maybe there's more to this story. My phone rang. "Robert." "Margaret, I need you to stay off social media completely. Your neighbor Jean just..." "I know. I'm sorry. She was trying to help." "I understand. But anything you or anyone close to you says publicly can be used against you. The prosecution needs you to look like the victim, not like you're engaged in a public feud with your daughter." "So I just let her lie about me?" "For now, yes. I know it's hard, but we're building a case based on evidence, not emotion. Let's win in court, not on Facebook." That afternoon, I went to see my doctor, Dr. Patricia Brennan, who'd been my physician for 15 years. I told her I needed documentation of my mental competency. She set down her pen and looked at me over her desk. "Maggie, what's going on?" So I told her. All of it. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I can absolutely provide documentation that you're mentally sound. I can also refer you to a psychologist for a formal evaluation if that would help your case." She leaned forward. "But Maggie, how are you really doing? Beyond the legal stuff, this is an enormous amount of stress." "I'm managing." "That's not what I asked." I looked down at my hands. at the age spots and the veins that seem more prominent than they used to be. I'm sad, I said quietly, and angry, and sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, if I should just drop everything, give them the money, pretend none of this happened. And other times? Other times I know that if I did that, I'd be telling them it's okay to hurt me, that I don't matter, that I'm just a resource to be used up. My voice cracked. I can't do that, Pat. I can't. She reached across the desk and squeezed my hand. Then you're doing the right thing. It's the hard thing, but it's right. 2 weeks later, Detective Kovacs called again. We found something. Derek's laptop had a folder full of practice signatures, yours, from what looks like old birthday cards and documents they must have gotten from your house. He was literally tracing them, practicing. So you have proof? We have strong evidence. There's also email correspondence between Derek and someone who appears to be a document forger, though we're still tracking that person down. The DA thinks we have enough to formally charge them, both Derek with fraud and identity theft, Claire with assault and conspiracy to commit fraud. When? Arraignment is scheduled for next month. They'll be formally arrested, brought before a judge, and asked to enter a plea. You don't have to be there, but you can be if you want. I thought about seeing Claire in handcuffs, in a courtroom, facing criminal charges. Part of me wanted to be there, to look her in the eye, but another part of me couldn't bear it. I'll decide closer to the date, I said. That night, Jean came over with Frank and a bottle of wine. We sat on my porch as the sun set, and Frank laid out what would likely happen next. They'll probably take a plea deal. First-time offenders, family situation. A good lawyer will argue for probation and restitution rather than jail time. So they won't go to prison? They might. Depends on the judge, the prosecutor, how good their lawyers are. But even if they don't, they'll have criminal records. Derek will never work in finance again. They'll owe you restitution for the legal fees, the medical costs, emotional damages. Their lives as they knew them are over. Jean poured wine into plastic cups. Good. Maybe they'll learn something. Maybe, though I doubt it. People like Derek don't learn. They just find new victims. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets, watching the fireflies blink in the growing dark. It felt peaceful, this moment, almost normal. My granddaughter graduates high school next year. She wants to be a lawyer, says she wants to help people who can't help themselves. That's wonderful, I said. She asked about you the other day, said she heard some kids at school talking, repeating things their parents had said. Jean's voice hardened. I set her straight, told her exactly what happened. She wants to write an essay about you for her civics class, about standing up to family when family is wrong. I felt tears prick my eyes. She doesn't have to do that. I know, but she wants to. She said you're brave. Jean looked at me, and she's right. You are. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired and sad and older than my 63 years. But maybe that's what bravery was. Not the absence of fear or pain, but moving forward despite it. My phone buzzed. A notification from the security app. Movement detected at the front door. All three of us tensed. Frank was on his feet immediately, moving toward the door. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. A figure stood on my porch, back to the camera, doing something with the doorknob. Testing it maybe, or trying to pick the lock. They wore dark clothes, a hood pulled up. Call the police, Frank said quietly. Now. I dialed 911 as Frank opened the door, his presence filling the doorway. Police are on their way. I suggest you leave. The figure spun around, and in the porch light, I caught a glimpse of their face. Not Claire, not Derek. Someone younger, male, with a startled expression. He ran. Frank didn't chase him, too smart for that, but he got a good look. Did your camera catch his face? I rewound the footage. There, just a few seconds of clear video before he'd turned away. A young man, maybe early 20s, with a distinctive scar on his left cheek. The police arrived within minutes. I showed them the footage. Officer Martinez, the same officer who'd responded to the assault, watched it twice. I know this kid, Tony Mancuso. He's got a record, breaking and entering, petty theft, works his muscle for various people. He looked at me. Someone hired him to do this, to scare you or worse. Derek, I said. It had to be Derek. We'll bring Tony in, see if he'll talk. These guys usually flip pretty easy when facing additional charges. Martinez made notes, but Mrs. Hartford, you need to be extra careful now. If they're hiring people to harass you, this is escalating. After everyone left, I sat in my living room with all the lights on, too wired to sleep. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Last warning. Drop the charges or things get worse. I forwarded it to Detective Kovacs and Martinez. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the dark street. Somewhere out there, my daughter was planning her next move, and I needed to be ready. Tony Mancuso talked. Of course he did. Officer Martinez called me the next morning to tell me that when faced with breaking and entering charges on top of his existing probation violations, Tony had given up his employer within 20 minutes. Derek had paid him $500 to scare the old lady into dropping charges. Tony's words, not mine. That's witness intimidation, attempted burglary, and criminal conspiracy, Detective Kovacs explained when she called later that day. Derek's bail is being revoked. He'll be held until trial now, and we're adding these new charges to the existing ones. And Claire? Her lawyer is trying to distance her from Derek's actions, claiming she didn't know about any of it. But her phone records show multiple calls to Derek right before Tony showed up at your house. She knew. The arraignment happened on a gray Thursday in November. I decided to go, after all. Robert drove me to the courthouse, a stern brick building downtown that looked exactly like what injustice felt like. Cold, imposing, indifferent. We sat in the back of the courtroom. I wore my best navy dress, the one I'd worn to Henry's funeral, and kept my hands folded in my lap to stop them from shaking. Derek was brought in first, in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his expensive suits and his arrogance. His eyes scanned the courtroom and landed on me. He stared, and I stared back, refusing to look away. Then Claire was let in. She wore gray, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked young, vulnerable, exactly what her lawyer wanted. When she saw me, something crumpled in her face. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but then her jaw set, and she looked away. The judge read the charges. For Derek, fraud, identity theft, forgery, witness intimidation, conspiracy to commit fraud. For Claire, assault, causing bodily harm, conspiracy to commit fraud, accessory to witness intimidation. How do you plead? The judge asked. Not guilty, Derek's lawyer said firmly. Not guilty, Claire's lawyer echoed. The judge set a trial date for February and discussed bail. Derek's was revoked due to the witness intimidation charges. Claire's was set at $50,000. I watched her face go pale. They didn't have $50,000. That's why this whole nightmare had started. After the arraignment, Robert guided me out through a side door to avoid reporters. Yes, reporters. The local paper had caught wind of the story, and apparently, widow presses charges against daughter for fraud and assault. Made for good headlines. Don't talk to them, Robert warned. Nothing on the record, nothing off the record. Let the courts handle this. But one reporter caught up with us in the parking lot. Mrs. Hartford, how does it feel to see your daughter facing prison time? I stopped, despite Robert's hand on my elbow urging me forward. I looked at the reporter, a young woman with eager eyes and a recorder thrust in my direction. It feels, I said quietly, like the saddest thing that's ever happened to me, but also like the right thing. Sometimes those are the same. Robert got me into the car before she could ask follow-up questions. "That was good," he said as we drove away. "Dignified, human. If she quotes you, that's the narrative we want." But I wasn't thinking about narratives. I was thinking about Claire's face in that courtroom, about how young she'd looked, how scared. I was thinking about how I'd imagined her future once: college, career, marriage, maybe grandchildren for me to spoil. Never this. Never orange jumpsuits and bail hearings and the word defendant attached to her name. The article came out the next day. The reporter had quoted me exactly, and the piece was surprisingly balanced. It laid out the facts: the forged documents, the assault, the witness intimidation. But it also included a statement from Claire's lawyer claiming I was a vindictive mother punishing her daughter for marrying someone I didn't approve of. Jean brought the paper over and we read it together over coffee. "At least people will know the truth now," she said. "Some people. Others will believe what they want to believe." She was right. Over the next few weeks, I learned who my real friends were. Some people reached out with support: cards in the mail, calls to check on me, invitations to coffee. Others disappeared, either because they believed Claire's version or because they didn't want to get involved in something so messy. My sister Rachel called from Arizona, horrified. "Maggie, why didn't you tell me this was happening?" "I didn't want to worry you." "Worry me? Maggie, your daughter assaulted you. She tried to steal your money. Of course you should have told me." Her voice softened. "Do you want me to come out there? I can be on a plane tomorrow." "No, I'm okay, really. I have good people here helping me. Promise me you'll call if you need anything. Anything at all." I promised. Frank continued digging into Derek's background and found more than I wanted to know. Gambling debts to dangerous people, a history of financial schemes, a previous marriage that had ended badly, with allegations of financial abuse. Claire had married a con man, and either she didn't know or hadn't cared. The prosecution is going to use all of this. They're building a picture of Derek as a habitual offender, someone who manipulates and exploits people. Claire's lawyer will try to paint her as another victim, someone he manipulated into helping him. Was she a victim, I mean? Frank considered this, maybe at first, but when she threw that coffee, when she sent those threatening texts, when she knew about Tony coming to your house, at some point you stop being a victim and start being a willing participant. The weeks crawled by. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it with Jean and her family, surrounded by warmth and noise and people who actually cared about me. Her granddaughter, Emily, the one writing the essay, asked me thoughtful questions about standing up for yourself, about when family loyalty becomes enabling. My civics teacher says the hardest thing about ethics is when doing the right thing hurts, Emily said. Is that true? I thought about Claire in that courtroom, about the years ahead of us filled with trials and lawyers and broken relationships that might never heal. Yes, I said, that's very true. Christmas was harder. I decorated my small tree, hung Henry's favorite ornament, a wooden angel I'd bought on our honeymoon, and tried not to think about Claire as a little girl on Christmas morning, her face bright with wonder. The plea deal came in January. Derek's lawyer reached out to the prosecutor asking for a meeting. Robert called to tell me about it. Derek is willing to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, 5 years, possibly less with good behavior, full restitution to you for all costs, legal fees, medical expenses, the security system, everything. And Claire? If Derek pleads guilty and testifies that Claire was a knowing participant, she'll likely take a deal too. Probably probation, community service, and restitution. No jail time. I sat with this information, trying to sort through how I felt. Relief that it might be over? Disappointment that Claire wouldn't face more consequences? Guilt that I was even having these thoughts? What do you think I should do? I asked Robert. That's not my decision, but I'll tell you what I told my own mother once. Mercy doesn't mean letting people hurt you. You can forgive someone and still hold them accountable. The final hearing was in early February. Both Derek and Claire stood before the judge and formally entered guilty pleas. The judge accepted them, read out the sentences, and ordered restitution in the amount of $68,000, every penny I'd spent fighting this nightmare. Claire was given 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling. Derek got 4 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 2. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement, I stood. My legs were shaking, but I walked to the front of the courtroom and faced my daughter. "Claire," I said, and my voice only wavered slightly. "I loved you from the moment you were born. I would have done anything for you, but I won't let you destroy me to save yourself from consequences you brought on yourself. What you did was wrong. How you did it was cruel, and I hope someday you understand that."
I looked at Derek. "And you took my daughter's desperation and turned it into something criminal. You manipulated her, used her, and when things went wrong, you let her take the fall with you. I hope prison gives you time to think about the lives you've ruined." I returned to my seat. Claire was crying silently, her shoulders shaking. Derek stared straight ahead, his face blank. After it was over, after they were led away, Robert walked me out into the winter sunshine. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Empty," I said, "and free, both at the same time." The months that followed were strange. I was suddenly alone in a way I hadn't been even after Henry died. At least then, I'd had Claire's occasional calls, the illusion of family still intact. Now I had nothing. No daughter, no son-in-law, just myself and the quiet life I'd built. But slowly, I found I didn't mind the quiet as much. I volunteered more at the library, helping with literacy programs. I joined a book club Jean had been trying to get me into for years. I took a watercolor painting class at the community center and discovered I was terrible at it, but enjoyed it anyway. Frank and his wife invited me to dinner once a month. Emily came by sometimes after school to ask me questions for various school projects. Jean remained my daily check-in, my coffee companion, my friend. I had a life, smaller than I'd planned, but mine. The restitution money came in installments. Derek's family, wealthy people I'd never met, paid his portion immediately, probably to avoid the embarrassment of having their son's debts drag on. Claire paid hers through wage garnishment from her new job at a retail store. It would take her years. She wrote me letters from prison, 3 of them, over the first 6 months. I didn't open them. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. Or maybe someday I would. Maybe there would come a time when I could read her words without feeling that burn on my face, that betrayal in my heart. Maybe forgiveness was something that happened slowly, in pieces, over years. But for now, I was healing. The burn scars had faded to pale lines on my cheek, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. The emotional scars would take longer. Maybe they'd never fully fade. Maybe that was okay. One Sunday morning in April, I sat on my porch with coffee and Henry's old gardening journal. He'd kept notes about what he planted each year, what thrived and what didn't. I decided I'd try growing roses this year, the good kind. The ones that required patience and care, but rewarded you with beauty. My phone buzzed, a text from Jean. "Coffee at my place? Made cinnamon rolls." I texted back, "Be there in 20. As I got ready to go, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. 63 years old, silver-haired, with laugh lines and the remnants of a daughter's rage on my face. I'd been a wife, a mother, a widow, a victim. But I was also a survivor. Someone who stood up when it would have been easier to stay down. Someone who chose herself when everyone told her to choose family. I thought about Henry, about what he'd say if he could see me now. I imagined him smiling, proud, telling me I'd done good, that I'd been strong enough for both of us. "I miss you," I whispered to his picture on the wall. "But I'm okay. I'm going to be okay." And walking out into that April morning, heading toward Jean's house and cinnamon rolls and another ordinary day of this smaller, quieter life, I realized I believed it. I was going to be okay. Some people think family means loyalty no matter what, that blood is thicker than betrayal, that a mother should forgive anything, endure everything. But I learned something through all of this. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's martyrdom. And there's no virtue in letting someone destroy you just because you shared DNA. I didn't want this battle. I didn't choose this pain. But when it came, when my daughter stood in my kitchen and demanded I hand over my future, my security, my husband's legacy, I chose myself. And that choice, as hard as it was, saved me. Not everyone understood. Some people still see me as the vindictive mother who put her daughter through hell over money. Let them think what they want. The people that matter, the people that really know me, they understand. They saw the burns, the forged documents, the manipulation. They know the truth.
And truth, I've learned, is a kind of freedom. Even when it's painful. Even when it costs you everything you thought you couldn't live without. Would I take it all back if I could? Would I pay that money? Let them get away with it? Preserve the illusion of family? No, 1,000 times no. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for someone who's lost their way is to hold the line. To say, this far, no further. To show them that actions have consequences. That love doesn't mean being a doormat. That you matter too. I don't know if Claire learned that lesson. I don't know if she ever will. But I learned it. And that has to be enough. So I ask you, whoever's listening to this story, what would you have done? If your own child stood before you demanding everything you had, threatening everything you were, would you have had the strength to say no? I hope you never have to find out. But if you do, I hope you remember this. You are worth protecting. Your life, your peace, your dignity, they matter. Don't let anyone, not even family, convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. And if my story helps even one person find the courage to stand up for themselves, then maybe all of this, the pain, the loss, the heartbreak, maybe it meant something after all. Take care of yourselves, hold your boundaries, and remember, sometimes the hardest choice is also the right one.